Frank Mir was once the scariest submission artist in UFC history, a heavyweight genius who could snap limbs and choke out giants. But today, the man who once ruled the octagon can barely walk without pain. His body is broken, his speech is slurred, and the fans who once cheered him on now worry he's headed down the same tragic path as so many fallen legends. Years of brutal knockouts, surgeries, and financial losses have left Frank Mir in a dark place. And the worst part? He's still fighting. This is the heartbreaking truth of what really happened to Frank Mir, and why his story isn't over yet. Frank Mir emerged in the early 2000s as a singular force at heavyweight. A third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Ricardo Pires, he arrived at UFC 29 with a rare combination of size, skill, and cerebral fight IQ. In his second UFC fight, he shocked fans by submitting Pete Williams with a shoulder lock. That was just a hint. The defining moment came at UFC 48 in 2004 when Mir faced then-champion Tim Sylvia. Within the opening seconds, he secured a perfect armbar and literally snapped Sylvia's arm, forcing a stoppage. In that instant, Mir was crowned heavyweight champion at just 25 years old. Promos called him Submission Shark, leg bar operator, and recognized him as the first heavyweight to wield jiu-jitsu with surgical precision. Mir's posture was calm, his speech measured. He debated technique during interviews better than some commentators. Joe Rogan described him as the smartest man in the division, a thinker in a division built on power. In Pride, he stunned fans again by submitting the legendary Fedor Emelianenko, confirming his supernatural grappling reputation. Offstage, Mir was active in training, grappling, drilling, fighting smarter than most fighters dared. Sponsors lined up for the articulate, clean-cut champion. He wasn't just strong, he was methodical. Analyst labels like heavyweight scholar followed him. But behind that poised presence was a ticking time bomb. His training injuries were mounting. By mid-2004, doctors began expressing concern that Mir was pushing through torn ligaments. Still, he pressed forward, believing strength of will would compensate for physical degradation. That focus was shattered in September 2004 when Mir was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle in Las Vegas. His femur snapped, his ligaments shredded. Doctors told him he might never walk again. He was stripped of his title and, unofficially, his invincibility. But Mir ignored everyone who said to quit. He embarked on months of grueling rehab, returned to the cage in 2006, and regained his title via disqualification win over Tim Sylvia. But the body that walked into the octagon that night was different, slower, heavier, trailing behind the brain that still believed in greatness. Mir's career had been reborn, but the man inside was beginning to crack. That crack would widen, and we'll follow it through the next chapters. Frank Mir's post-injury comeback wasn't celebrated. It was a grim battle against his own physical limits. He returned in early 2006 with confidence intact, but mobility compromised. His first fight back was against skilled grappler Marcio Cruz, and Mir was thoroughly dominated. It was his first TKO loss, a painful indicator that the old engine had lost its edge. Mir admitted he returned too soon. Between physical therapy sessions, he still missed nerve impulses in his leg. His once legendary fight IQ felt inconsistent. Still, he pressed on because what else could he do? In 2008, he scored one of his biggest wins, submitting Brock Lesnar with a Kimura. But even in victory, the signs were there. Post-fight, Mir winced walking out of the octagon, hips unable to extend fully, evidence the surgeries didn't fix everything. By 2010, he suffered a shocking knockout loss to Cain Velasquez. Bully Velasquez cornered him and landed a lightning punch in just a few seconds. Mir laid motionless. Fans gasped. MMA outlets called it the beginning of the end. His resilience was still there, and maybe that's why the body kept failing. Mir bounced back with wins here and there against Antonio Silva, Cheikh Congo, but each fight took a visible toll. His step slowed, his guard dropped, his chin, once rock solid, wobbled. Between 2012 and 2016, he suffered knockout after knockout. Cyril Diabot, Tyson Pedro, Mark Hunt. None of the losses were close, and Mir never rallied. The mental fatigue was visible, mimicking signs of cumulative brain trauma, delayed reactions, delayed defense, and slurred speech during post-fight interviews. Yet for his mind, the fight wasn't over. He publicly said he trusted his system, but privately his team admitted physical therapy wasn't enough. Still, he continued accepting fights. Not for fame, because fame had largely forgotten him, but out of necessity. In every fight, crowds watched the legend fight the clock. He still had moments of sharpness, a takedown, an arm lock finish, but they were shorter now, sporadic in a career that once gleamed with consistency. Mir's glow from the early career had faded, but his obsession hadn't, and the second slip, mental as much as physical, was about to come. Between 2012 and 2016, Frank Mir endured the most punishing stretch of his career. The fight fans once trusted to control pace and space began getting mauled in first-round knockouts. One by one, losses to Antonio Silva, Tyron Woodley, Alistair Overeem, and a devastating finish by Mark Hunt. It wasn't just that he was losing, it was how he was losing. Against Overeem in 2014, Mir absorbed 139 strikes in a single fight, jabs landing clean, head snapping back. He survived until the end, but his face was battered blue. In rounds where he could once control grappling exchanges, now he absorbed damage while doing little offensively. Even commentators noted his 5'11" frame lacked fluidity, and his responses processed slower. He scored a highlight win over Todd Duffy in 2015, landing a looping left hook that finished in under 90 seconds. Mir smiled, nodded, and raised his hand in triumph. For a moment, fans dreamed of the old Mir, intelligent, strategic, unbeatable, but it was fleeting. Just 8 months later, in his final UFC outing in 2016, he faced Mark Hunt. One clean right hand on the chin. Mir collapsed, unconscious, flat out. The referee waved off the fight. He tested positive for oral turinabol afterward. UFC suspended him. At 37, after 15 years, Frank Mir's UFC career ended, not with remorse, but with another knockout loss that looked like the culmination of thousands of accumulated strikes. That final fight wasn't just a loss. It felt violent, unnecessary. Fans reacted with a mix of heartbreak and anger. He had survived spinal reconstruction surgery in 2004, like offering his brain on a platter. But Mir didn't retire. He turned to Bellator, breakout contracts, commentary guest spots, and even a boxing exhibition. He wanted to stay relevant. He wanted to provide. He still believed in his system. And, more than anything, he still believed he could win. Because if Mir stopped fighting, what was he supposed to be? This streak wasn't just a record. It was evidence of a fighter's draining fortress. Every strike was tiling cracks in the walls that were once indestructible. And now, the cracks would spread. When Frank Mir signed with Bellator in 2018, fans hoped the change in scenery would bring a rebirth. But the truth was, Mir wasn't entering a new era. He was stepping deeper into the void. His debut was against Fedor Emelianenko, another fallen giant. It should have been a battle of legends. Instead, it was over in 48 seconds. Mir got clipped early, dropped fast, and finished cold. The commentary booth went silent for a moment, and so did fans at home. In the aftermath, Mir spoke like he always did, measured, optimistic, strategic, but his eyes said something else. The coordination was slower, the delivery more monotone, and fans began asking a hard question. Why is he still doing this? He'd say it was for competition, but friends knew better. There were bills, contracts, medical expenses, legacy pressure, and perhaps the worst weight of all, pride. Mir fought again in Bellator, against Yavi Ayala in 2019, and again he fell. He took massive damage, turned his back, and the fight was stopped. The aura was long gone. Bellator offered less protection than the UFC, and still, Mir wouldn't say no. In interviews, he brushed off concern. "I can still go," he said. "I still have things to prove." But behind the scenes, his team quietly urged him to reconsider. He was training through nerve pain. His movement had become stiff. He needed painkillers just to make it through drills. And while his heart was as big as ever, his body simply wasn't responding. This wasn't a legend chasing glory. This was a man clinging to identity. The fight game had defined him for 2 decades. How could he just walk away? Especially with his daughter Bella entering MMA and depending on him, the cage had changed. But Mir's war hadn't. And now the battle wasn't just with opponents. It was with time itself. Frank Mir isn't just a fighter. He's a husband, a father, and the coach to one of MMA's rising stars, his daughter, Bella. And this is where things get even more heartbreaking. Because behind his continued appearances in the cage is a financial and emotional load few fans ever see. Mir's body is battered, but his pride is intact. He's said in interviews that he'll keep fighting to make sure his family's taken care of. But those sacrifices come with a steep cost. Years of injuries have meant endless medical bills, surgeries, physical therapy, custom rehab programs. The payouts from smaller promotions like Bellator or Triller aren't enough to cushion retirement. And certainly not when you're also trying to fund your daughter's training and future. So, he fights. And fights again. In 2021, Mir even stepped into a boxing ring under the Triller banner against Steve Cunningham, a former cruiserweight champion. It was clear from the start, Mir was out of his element. His reflexes weren't there. His coordination was delayed. He lost via unanimous decision. But the real damage wasn't in the scorecards, it was in the optics. People were now openly questioning his well-being. In between fights, Mir made appearances on podcasts and interviews, often promoting Bella's career while smiling through what sounded like exhaustion. Fans began noticing his speech. It was different, slower, occasionally slurred. The man who once called fights as an analyst with incredible clarity now sounded like someone searching for words. But still, he showed up. Because for Mir, walking away wasn't just quitting fighting. It was giving up everything that made him who he was. And when you've spent 2 decades inside cages, under lights, hearing your name echo in arenas, how do you go back to normal? This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about legacy, about being there for Bella, about going down swinging, no matter how broken the body became. By 2022, something shifted in the way fans looked at Frank Mir. They weren't just admiring him anymore, they were worrying. His interviews had changed. His delivery, once articulate and composed, was now halting. Words came out slow. He paused more often. His trademark verbal sharpness had dulled. Clips comparing his speech from 2006 to recent appearances started spreading on YouTube and Reddit. "Is Frank okay?" became a common thread title. Some fans whispered CTE, others hoped it was just age. But the look in Mir's eyes, vacant, distracted, told a different story. Physically, too, things were off. In public appearances, he walked stiffly. His left side favored weight. At one grappling event, he stumbled during warm-ups. It wasn't dramatic, but to anyone who remembered Mir's athleticism, it was telling. In podcasts, fellow fighters like Brendan Schaub and Chael Sonnen tiptoed around the issue. They praised his legacy, but subtly hinted that some legends need to be saved from themselves. Mir's longtime fans weren't just frustrated anymore, they were afraid. And what made it more tragic was that Frank Mir never admitted anything was wrong. He denied concerns. He laughed off symptoms. When asked about CTE, he said, "That's something other people worry about. I'm focused on my family." But denial isn't protection. And every punch he took, every camp he pushed through, made the truth more visible. This wasn't just aging, it was degeneration. And the most haunting part? No one in the industry was stepping in. Not Bellator, not the UFC, not even the commissions. The same organizations that made millions off Frank Mir's name had fallen silent. While he kept fighting through what everyone else could clearly see, Frank Mir still hasn't officially retired. He hasn't made a dramatic exit speech. He hasn't posted a farewell video or closed the door on his fighting career. And maybe that's what makes this story even more haunting, because everyone watching knows how this ends, except Frank himself. The signs are all there. His speech has slowed. His motor skills are visibly off. He's admitted to using painkillers to train, to waking up sore in ways he didn't expect. And yet, in the next interview, argue. He'll smile and say, "I still love this game." It's not denial, it's identity. Frank Mir doesn't know a life without fighting. His entire adult existence has been built inside a cage. The lights, the crowd, the danger, it's all he's known. And when the body fades, and the crowd disappears, what's left? Friends close to Mir have said he's tired, but he won't admit it. He's worried that if he stops, he'll fall apart, that if he isn't training, he won't know what to do. That's the saddest part. The fight is the only thing holding him together, even as it's tearing him apart. And fans, they're caught between admiration and heartbreak. They want to honor his toughness, but they also want someone, anyone, to tell him it's time. Maybe Bella will. Maybe the industry will wake up. Or maybe, tragically, Mir's final chapter will be written the way so many others have been, in a hospital bed, far from the cage, wondering if it was all worth it. Because for Frank Mir, the story isn't over, but the last few pages are turning, and what's coming next may be the most painful round of all. And the next chapter wouldn't get any easier. If there's one glimmer of light in Frank Mir's story, it's his daughter Bella. She's not just a rising star in combat sports, she's a prodigy. With multiple finishes in her amateur and professional fights, Bella mirrors her father's early precision and grappling dominance. But as fans cheer her on, another question looms. What is she inheriting from her father's legacy? Frank trains her, he corners her, he reviews her tapes, celebrates her victories, and helps her cut weight. But all the while, he does it with a body that's clearly breaking down. Behind every smile in the training room is a man pushing through nerve damage, decades of trauma, and increasing signs of cognitive decline. And Bella sees it. In interviews, she's spoken emotionally about her father's influence, saying, "He's everything I want to be, but I also want to protect him." The tragedy is twofold. While Mir supports Bella with everything he has left, he's also unknowingly showing her the cost of this life. She's watching up close how the fight game gives glory, then takes everything else. She's seeing firsthand how fame fades, how pain accumulates, and how even legends are left to fight with what little they have left, because they don't know any other way to live. Bella once said, "I fight because of him. He made me strong." But the fear many fans now carry is this: what if she also inherits his stubbornness, his inability to quit, his deep fear of disappearing from the spotlight? Frank Mir's love for his daughter is undeniable, but love, in this context, is complicated, because even as he teaches her technique, he's also passing down the trauma. And while Bella may be on the rise, the man holding the mitts for her coach, her idol, is slipping further into the shadows. There's something deeply emotional in this reversal. The daughter rising while the father fades, and neither of them can fully stop the clock. One of the most unsettling elements of Frank Mir's current reality is the lack of intervention. The UFC, Bellator, Triller, every organization that profited from his highlight reels, his comebacks, his brutal wars, have all gone silent. They praise him in press clips and throw his name on greatest of lists, but behind closed doors, there's no safety net. Mir isn't part of the UFC's wellness program. He isn't on commentary panels anymore. And when fans asked Dana White about Mir's legacy, the answer was short. "Legend," he said. "Tough guy," but that was it. No offer of support, no medical assistance, no acknowledgement of the man's visible decline. Fellow fighters have noticed. Joe Rogan, who once praised Mir's BJJ on air, hasn't spoken about him in years. Brendan Schaub has cautiously mentioned his concern, saying, "Some of these guys, like Frank, you just want someone to step in and say, 'No more.'" But no one has. The commissions still clear him. The promoters still sign him. And Mir, as proud as he is, keeps walking forward because no one's blocking the door. Compare that to other sports. The NFL has programs for retired players with trauma. Boxing has foundations for fallen legends. But in MMA, you vanish. There's no pension. No long-term health protection. The cage is the reward and the punishment. Mir, who gave 20 years to the sport, who broke bones and ate shots for crowds around the world, is now left to face the fallout alone. The message is clear. Once you stop selling tickets, you stop mattering. And that's the brutal reality. Not just for Frank Mir, but for every fighter who comes after him. His legacy isn't just his fights. It's the warning he now becomes.